What's going on, guys? This is AndrewChicken and welcome back to another video. Fernando is one of the most fun tanks to play and was one of the easiest frontliners in the realm, but that doesn't mean that there aren't different tricks, loadouts, and more that you can use to become better at Fernando. From his Scorch loadout, to a build that makes it nearly impossible to kill him, to simply moonwalking with his shield to prevent the enemies from shooting your back, Fernando has a whole slew of different loadouts and tricks that can make him a huge threat. So without further ado, let's get into how to play Fernando in Paladins. Fernando has two very strong builds, with the most popular being Scorch because of its super high damage potential, and the other being a strong sustain build that makes dying very difficult. When building a Scorch Fernando loadout, having Incinerate at level 5 is mandatory, and I find that having Hot Pursuit really helps too, since you'll have increased movement speed 2/3 of the time, since he can fire a fireball every 3 seconds and the speed buff lasts for 2. Since Fernando gets slowed when he attacks, having this extra speed buff is extremely helpful for getting him back up to normal speed, so he can chase down enemies with ease. Now, this is the part in the video where you'd expect me to say that Brand 5 is the other super important card for a good Scorch build, but that's not the case. First of all, the most amount of Cauterize you can get from that card is 75%, so you're better off just saving for Cauterize 3 and getting the most potent Cauterize possible. Secondly, Cauterize is only effective if you can reapply it consistently, and if you only rely on Brand for your Cauterize, then you're only applying it every 3 seconds, which gives the enemy you're chasing enough time for the Cauterize to wear off and get healed before you can apply it again. If you decide to buy Cauterize and use Brand at the same time, then by the time you get Cauterize 3, the 5 loadout points you used on Brand are wasted. I don't see why you would put it into your loadout, so I would recommend that you refrain from using that card. The card I think is helpful instead is Looks at Kill at level 3. This card regenerates ammo whenever you hit someone with your fireball, so having it at level 3 allows you to instantly regenerate all your ammo back every time you hit someone. Having it any higher is just excessive, but by using this card you never have to let go of fire unless you're chasing someone and need the movement speed, which allows for Fernando to get the most damage out of his broken, easy to use weapon. Now of course, you are going to come across some battles where the enemy team has a ridiculous amount of crowd control. In cases like this, having an iteration of your loadout with Immovable Object can be a lifesaver when facing all those stuns, knockbacks, and disarms. In my CC reduction loadout for Scorch, I swap out Hot Pursuit for Immovable Object at level 5, and take away some levels from my filler cards so that's possible. This way, you can still have maximum damage with the infinite ammo from Looks at Kill and Incinerate, but you can also survive the onslaught of crowd control at the cost of a little bit of movement speed. The other playstyle for Fernando is one I like to call Undying. This one is a good option whenever you expect to take unhealthy amounts of damage on the front line, or have a low-level healer that you don't really trust to keep you alive, and is one that I go over in detail in the other Fernando guide I made, which I'll have a link to in the description if you need additional help with Fernando and this loadout. For starters, you want to pick up Formidable, since it gives you what's basically a personal Ceres heal whenever you fall below 40% health every 45 seconds. While this talent doesn't have the same damage capacity as Scorch, since you're not buffing the fireball at all, it works wonders at keeping you alive to fight with other tanks. For this loadout, having Last Stand is absolutely crucial for keeping you alive when you're low and you put up your shield. At level 5, this card heals you for 100 health a tick, which is half of Ceres' heal and is one of the strongest healing loadout cards in the game. Safe Travel and Heat Transfer are also two great cards for this Undying build, since they increase how often you can use your charge and give you a shield after you use it. Buffing Fernando's health with Cavalier and recharging ammo with Looks at Kill are both great filler cards, and these in conjunction with his talent are sure to keep you alive in the toughest of scenarios. As with a Scorch build, you want to have a variant of this loadout that counters heavy crowd control. For my version of this Undying loadout, I swapped out Looks at Kill for Immovable Object, remove Safe Travel 3 with Fearless Leader 1, and use the extra 2 points to buff Immovable Object up to 5. With this sort of playstyle, you'll not only be a super scary tank with lots of health, the most versatile shield in the game, and an easy yet threatening weapon, but you'll have gobs of healing and almost total crowd control immunity as well, which makes Fernando quite a threat against almost any player. Fernando is a very versatile tank, able to duel other tanks and take fire from numerous enemies or flank the backline, opening up an opportunity for the rest of his team to help him flank or surround the enemy tank and take them down. Oftentimes the best way to flank is to charge in from the side, attack the enemies in the backline with some help from the flanker on your team, and when you get low, drop your shield, heal up and repeat the process, or diverge onto the enemy tank if you've taken out the backline successfully. Depending on which playstyle you choose, the way you flank will be different. If you're playing Scorch Fernando, you want to act more like a true flank, trying to burst down the enemy champions in the backline as quick as possible with your unlimited ammo and fireball. However, if you're playing Undying Fernando, your goal is to create enough of a diversion in the backline that your team can push forward and score some kills, since you won't have enough DPS to take out multiple damage champions by yourself without the enhanced fireball from Scorch. If you flank with Undying Fernando, you want to keep in mind that if you're initiating a fight by flanking, you'll most likely have your heal from Formidable ready. So you want to spread out your heal from your talent and Last Stand in order to maximize how often you're getting healed. If you engage a fight with one or more champions, you can shoot at them for several seconds while Formidable is healing you, which is more useful than simply standing there with your shield up since you're actually posing a threat. With either playstyle, you never want to engage the fight with a charge or with your shield up. Your charge has two purposes when flanking: to chase after the enemy notices you and tries to run away, or to retreat if you're taking too much damage. Your shield, of course, is to defend yourself by either retreating, to block incoming damage in tough situations, or even to block ults like Victor's by aiming it at the center of the blast and walking backwards. Oftentimes, if you're taking too much fire, either when flanking or on the objective where numerous people are firing on you, it's important to both use your shield and the charge at the same time. However, the mistake a lot of Fernando players make, including myself, is to not moonwalk. That's right, the King of Pop's signature dance move is actually the key to surviving a lot of scenarios where you would otherwise die because your back is turned towards 5 guns. Whenever you dash as Fernando with your shield up, your shield stays in one place the entire dash forward, leaving your back completely exposed for the duration of the dash if you're trying to retreat. However, if you quickly jump while facing your shield towards the enemy, flick 180 degrees behind you, dash, and then flick back, your shield will remain facing towards the enemy while you moonwalk backwards. This takes a lot of practice, and I recommend you try this out multiple times in the shooting range before you try and take it out into battle. However, if you can master this trick, it will make you much harder to kill when you retreat. As far as Fernando's ultimate goes, you want to try and use it to counter any major ultimate that could devastate one or more members of your team, including but not limited to King Bomb, Hexafire, Evil Mojo, Through Time and Space, and of course the Dragon's Fury. It also helps to remember that your immortality applies to all teammates within a certain radius, so if you know that Drogoz isn't going to try and punch you, but is instead going to attack your other tank, you can still ult and save them from being annihilated. The absolute worst way you can use Fernando's ult, though, is if you're trying to save yourself when you're basically the only person alive. I don't know why, but a lot of Fernando players think that somehow if they ult when they're all alone, they'll stay alive long enough for their teammates to come back and they'll push forward again. This rarely ever happens, and it only ends up prolonging your death and making it so you're even more staggered with the rest of your team. Fernando's ult is not something you want to use by yourself. You want to use it to counter an ultimate or heavy fire when the rest of your team is there to push with you. As far as items go, there are a few that work really well with Fernando, and some that you should never use. Your offensive item should almost always be Cauterize, but if the enemy team has a lot of deployables like Ying's Illusions or Barracks Turrets, Bulldozer could also make sense. Wrecker doesn't work too well with Fernando's weapon, but Deft Hand should never ever be used with Fernando. It's about as useful with him as it would be with Maeve or Shaolin. There are really only 2 support items you will ever need: Rejuvenate and Kill to Heal. I wouldn't recommend Life Rip with Fernando, since his weapon doesn't deal quite enough damage for the heal to be viable like with Victor or Vivian's weapons. Almost every utility item is good with Fernando though, and it's almost entirely situational which one you choose. If you often find yourself flanking, Master Riding or Nimble are great picks. If you're constantly getting ulted by Drogoz or are taking more heavy fire than you'd like, Morale Boost can be helpful, and if you generally just need more help surviving, Chronos is the way to go. Defensive items are, as always, situational. Just don't pick up Resilience if you're using your CC build. So anyways, that's the end of this video. Did this video help you get better at Fernando, one of the most fun tanks to play in the realm? Leave a like if it did, and be sure to let me know what champion tutorial, top 5 list, or champion gameplay you'd like to see next. Also, be sure to join my Discord to pick up tips or leave suggestions using the code in the description, and subscribe if you want to see more content like this from me. I'll see you guys next time. Peace out.